Hi everyone. So today we are going to be doing a screencast for Module 2. Sorry, there we go. We're going to be discussing the YouTube video that is titled High Stakes Testing and the Demise of Teaching, and then the article titled The End of Public Schools or a New Beginning. In summary, the article discussed schools becoming increasingly privatized, the implementation of standardized and scripted curriculum, standardized tests creating data that judges the teachers, students, and schools, but does not provide worthwhile data back to the teachers and schools. So pretty much this data is telling whether a teacher and the student and the schools are up to par with these standards, but then not giving teachers back the data they need to increase the students' ability. Also, it discussed the unaccountable and unelected people that are influencing policy for education. So we might not be electing these people, and these people have no knowledge when it comes to the educational system, but they are funding people that are in charge of these areas. Sorry. And so then in the end, they are running the policy for education. And finally, the YouTube video really went on to discuss the high stakes testing that is used to portray public schools and teachers as failing, while corporate reforms as succeeding. So these corporate reforms are using test data to kind of show that public schools are failing by setting the passing score for a test at 80 out of 100 the student has to score to pass. But then when the corporate reform and the state takes over, they lower it to only, let's say, 50. They only have to score 50 out of 100 to pass. So when the test comes out, it's like, oh my goodness, this state-run school is performing so much better than when the public school was in charge. When in reality, they are changing the scores in their favor. So this kind of proves that test scores really don't show growth or failure when it comes to education. It's just manipulating test scores to their own needs. A question that was suggested to be discussed was, should we have Common Core standards? And I think this is kind of a loaded question just because Common Core has been portrayed poorly in the past few years. Me personally, I think that there should be guidelines that teachers need to follow from district to district, state to state. So let's say a student's coming from a different state, from Florida to California. When they move here, they should generally be learning the same stuff that they would have been at their old school. Maybe they might be a few weeks ahead or behind, but in general, they're able to learn the same stuff. I don't think that there should be any high stakes tests like there are now. Instead, I think there should be assessments that are used as benchmarks to check for overall improvement. So there should be an initial assessment, and then after some teaching towards these guidelines, there should be another assessment to see if the students are improving, and the teachers would be able to use this to alter their own teaching. I also don't think that there should be any set or scripted curriculum towards these guidelines. And finally, I think that the curriculum that they do teach should allow for room for creativity and expansion, as opposed to just sticking through straight lines. Who makes curriculum decisions? I've kind of heard and seen it all. In the article we read, it talked about a lot of the corporate reformers controlling curriculum, such as Pearson. Common Core standards are kind of run by the state. I have seen in San Diego Unified a lot of district-run curriculum, such as following a certain math program, and then they have to follow certain guidelines when teaching the math. In different schools in the districts, I have seen them following certain curriculums that they have purchased for their schools, such as Lucy Calkins. And then another school that I worked at in San Diego Unified was a charter within the Unified District, but they allowed their teachers to choose what curriculum they wanted to teach, and then the school would buy that for them. In that same school, they did a lot of project-based learning, and so they allowed the students to discuss kind of what they wanted to learn, And from there, the teachers decided if there was any curriculum that coincided with what the students wanted to learn. So that was kind of cool. And I think overall what we should gear towards is the teacher and student needs for curriculum. When reading the final paragraph in the article, The Path Ahead, there were some implications or questions that I had. So how do we take back education from the corporate reformers? They seem to have a really strong hold and a lot of money invested. What do we need to do to change this? Also, I feel like a lot of teachers in schools and districts aren't really aware of what's happening. So how do we get them aware, and how do we make these changes? Should everyone be able to participate in education policy making, or only those involved? So I know it stated that everyone should be able to decide education policy, but if they're not aware of these policies, or they're not educated on these policies, just like the corporate reformers are not, should they be able to choose, or should it just be the educators, the districts, the parents, those who are involved, and should they be the only ones that are involved in policy making? Also, are we able to assess students for college readiness before college assessment exam? Will students be prepared for this exam? So one of the examples in the last paragraph was a country that only tested students at the end for college readiness. But how do we prepare students for this college readiness? Obviously, we want them to get into colleges. How do we get them ready for this? And how do we teach them and know that they're going to score well on this test? Finally, will teachers be trained how to choose or create their own curriculum and assessments? Will they provide adequate time to do so? So in the credential program, I didn't learn about creating curriculum or choosing curriculum and an assessment. So this is something that's going to be taught to teachers, so they are aware of this and they're able to choose wisely. And then right now, we don't even have time to plan lessons, honestly. So will we be provided adequate time to choose curriculum and assessments? So that's it for Module 2. Thank you for listening.